I had a rather interesting occurrence, I guess, in the shop there the other day. I had brought this rough out back and turned the inside and done the initial shaping and removal of the tenon on the outside with the tailstock in place. Then I turned the vacuum on and prepared to start doing the finish turning on the outside. Now, as you see, I neglect to put my face shield down, so I could have gotten into trouble there. And I started cutting, and something didn't feel quite right. And yes, things weren't quite right. I'm not entirely sure what I was doing there. It looked like I reached over to shut the lathe off, and then I didn't shut it off for some reason, and then while I was watching what was going on with the vacuum hose, I stepped directly into the line of fire of the bowl. Here's a close-up view of what the hose was doing behind the headstock there. And now we'll run it through in slow motion. I started cutting, and I had my head down, so the brim of my cap was preventing me from seeing what was going on up the other end of the lathe where the hose was. But I became aware of something going on up there, and I stopped cutting, and it looks like I reached around to shut the lathe off. Why I had the medallion at that end instead of the tailstock end, I don't know. But then I stepped over almost directly into the line of fire, just as the bowl started wobbling and became jammed between the chuck and the tool rest and self-destructed. Now the amazing part is that not one of those pieces touched me. And it should have, for sure. That could have done some serious damage with no face shield and everything else, but I got away with one there. The bowl didn't survive, but I got through without any problems. What caused it was the bearing on my rotary adapter seized, causing the hose to start trying to spin with the bowl. Hello! Alright, so I have the vacuum adapter for my that I was using on my Nova lathe. That bearing seized on me, which resulted in a rather exciting few seconds of turning time. So I am going to replace the bearing. Now that is a press fit on there. I think maybe they call that an interference fit or something like that, where it's just machined so tight that you can force it on. You can force it on, but it won't. It takes a little bit of effort to get it off. So ideally, one would use a hydraulic press or something to do that, but I don't have a hydraulic press. What I have is the cutoff end of a peppermill blank. That hole's 1 1/16 inches. This is about 1 inch in diameter. So that drops into that hole, and it's a snug enough fit that the pressure is going to be at least partially on the inner race. I don't want to be putting all the pressure on the outer race, which might cause the bearing to come apart. And I don't have a press, so I'm going to just use a hammer. I'm not trying to save this bearing. If I were trying to take it apart and want to reuse the bearing, then maybe I'd be a little more careful. But this is small enough to pass through the inner race of the bearing, and big enough that it's not going into the center hole of the adapter there. And there it is, it's off. So that is the old bearing. That is the only, I guess, I'll confess this isn't, I actually took this off yesterday and I just put it back on so I could do the demonstration on video. I have cleaned that. There wasn't much on there, but there was a little bit of crud on that outer race, and I mounted that in the lathe and used a brass brush to clean it up. But so I want to make sure there's nothing on this shoulder that will prevent the new bearing from seating. Alright, so the bearing that failed, or wore out, I guess. Failed implies that it shouldn't have. It probably had seen enough service that, and face it, I'm pulling a vacuum through there. Now the vacuum is not, this surface is seating against the inside of the adapter, so the interface of this bearing is probably under vacuum. I could be sucking lubricant out of it. And it's a high dust environment in a wood shop, so it's, and even though that does have, that is a sealed bearing, it wore out. I'll say that rather than it failed. And there were signs. Actually, I posted 5 days before that seized. I happened to make a comment in one of the wood turning forums I belong to that my bearing was feeling pretty rough. So I mean there were signs. So it wasn't like it was, I should have changed it when I saw the signs instead of waiting until it actually seized on me and had it, made a problem. Anyway, this particular bearing, the one that came on the adapter from Technatool, is manufactured by NTN. That's just the brand name of the bearing, NTN. And the number is 6004LB. Now I took that across the road to the automotive supply store, which happens to be just about directly across the road from me. And I don't know, they deal with SKF instead of NTN, I guess. I don't know. I don't know nothing about bearings, but anyway, so he was able to order me the equivalent. This is 6004 to now. The 6004, I guess, has to do with the dimensions. I don't know bearing codes, but this 2RS means 2 rubber seals, meaning it's got rubber seals on both in and out. From this manufacturer, that's what that 2RS means. The LB must mean about the same thing from NTN, because that's basically the same. It's got rubber seals both sides. And in general, bearings are not all that expensive. These replacement bearings that I bought 2 of them so that I'd have one on hand. Are actually, these cost me $17 each, which is actually kind of high for bearings, but in the grand scheme of things, $17 is not a lot of money, and I'm willing to pay $17 to get my vacuum adapter back in service. So, it doesn't make any difference at all which way that goes, other than this is actually, this face has the numbers on it, and when I put that into the hand wheel on the lathe, this is the face that's going to be the outboard face is the part that might get some wear on it, just from going in and out and rubbing against. So I'm going to turn that around and have the numbers on the shoulder side, so that there's less chance that they'll get. I do have this spare here. It's not going to make any difference, but. And I'm going to press that on by putting it in the vise. But I'm going to get a little piece of wood so that when I'm putting my pressure on, I'm pressing on the inner race and not mostly on the inner race anyway. So I'm just going to get a piece of dowel or something, I guess. Okay, so I just grabbed a piece out of the scrap bin, or well, I probably should have used a piece that's a little bigger. Well, I guess that's big enough. And I just used the chop saw to cut, so I'd have 2 square sides on that. And I want things to be clean. Okay. So I'm just using the vise as a press here, and I want to keep all my pressure square. Alright, it's started on. And that's seated to the shoulder now. So there it is. The new bearing is on there, and it should be ready to put back in service. Now this one needs to get thrown out. So I don't see it sometime and think, oh, and this one needs to be put somewhere where I'll be able to find it. Ha! That's usually my biggest problem, is I buy an extra, so I'll have a spare, and then when the time comes that I need the spare, I can't find it. But there is my vacuum adapter, refurbed and ready to go back in service. Thank you for watching.